The warning sirens started screaming at exactly 3 in the morning. Kim Tae-ho dropped his tools and looked up at the dark sky through the factory window. He had lived on Kepler 7b for 5 years now, and he had never heard that particular alarm before. It was different from the usual ones. This one sounded angry. This one sounded scared. "Ion storm," someone shouted from across the processing plant. "Category 9. Everyone to the shelters." Tae-ho felt his blood go cold. He had read about Category 9 ion storms in the colony training manual. They happened once every 50 years. The radiation they carried could cook a human being in seconds. The manual said to get underground immediately. The manual said you had maybe 15 minutes, if you were lucky. He started running. The streets of the mining colony were pure chaos. People pushed and shoved in every direction. Children cried for their parents. Old people fell and struggled to get up. Tae-ho helped an elderly woman to her feet and pointed her toward the nearest shelter entrance before continuing his desperate sprint. When he reached Shelter 7, his heart sank. The massive metal doors were already closing. A security guard stood outside, waving people away. "Full capacity," the guard yelled. "Go to Shelter 12. Shelter 12 was on the other side of the colony. Tae-ho looked up at the sky again. The clouds had turned a sickly green color. Lightning that wasn't really lightning crackled across the horizon. He could feel static electricity making the hair on his arms stand up. He would never make it to Shelter 12. Tae-ho ran toward the landing pads instead. Maybe one of the cargo ships was still there. Maybe he could hide inside one of them. The hulls were thick enough to block radiation. It was a stupid plan, but it was the only plan he had. The landing pads were almost empty. Most ships had already launched, fleeing into orbit where the storm couldn't reach them. But one ship remained. It sat at the far end of the pad, and it looked like nothing Tae-ho had ever seen before. The ship was beautiful in a strange way. It didn't have the sharp angles and practical design of human vessels. Instead, it looked almost organic, like someone had grown it instead of building it. The hull was a deep purple color that seemed to shimmer in the green stormlight. Tae-ho had worked on dozens of different spacecraft in his career as an engineer. This was not human technology. He didn't care. The cargo bay door was open. A loading ramp extended down to the ground. Tae-ho sprinted up the ramp and threw himself behind a stack of containers just as the door began to close. He pressed his body flat against the floor and tried to control his breathing. The ship hummed to life. He felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity engaging, followed by the gentle push of acceleration. They were taking off. He was going to survive. Tae-ho lay there in the darkness for a long time. His heart was still pounding. His hands were still shaking. He thought about his mother, who lived on the other side of the colony near Shelter 3. He hoped she had made it inside in time. He hoped she was safe. The ship's engine noise changed. They had reached orbit. They were safe from the storm now. Tae-ho slowly sat up and looked around. The cargo bay was filled with containers of various sizes, all made from that same strange, organic-looking material. Soft blue lights glowed along the ceiling. The air smelled different here, sweeter somehow, with a hint of something like flowers. He needed to find the crew. He needed to explain himself. He needed to apologize for sneaking aboard their ship and hope they were friendly. Tae-ho stood up and walked toward what looked like a door at the far end of the cargo bay. Before he could reach it, the door slid open on its own. 7 figures stood on the other side. They were tall. Taller than any human Tae-ho had ever seen. Their skin was a soft blue color, like the sky on a clear Earth morning. Their eyes were large and luminous, glowing faintly in the dim light. They had no hair on their heads, but instead had what looked like delicate fins that swept back from their foreheads. They wore fitted uniforms in various colors, and every single one of them was female. They stared at him. He stared at them. One of them, wearing a red uniform that marked her as the captain, drew a weapon from her belt. It was a blade of some kind, glowing with plasma energy. She pointed it at his chest and said something in a language he didn't understand. The words were sharp, afraid, angry. Teho slowly raised his hands above his head. His translation device, a small earpiece all colonists wore, struggled to process the alien language. After a few seconds, it began providing rough translations. Death Worlder, the captain was saying. It's a Death Worlder. How did it get on my ship? One of the other aliens, younger than the rest and wearing a yellow uniform, stepped backward and bumped into the wall. Her large eyes were wide with what could only be fear. Kill it, another one said. She was muscular and wore black. A warrior, Teho guessed. Kill it before it kills us all, Teho understood now. Somehow, they knew what he was. Somehow, they knew he was human. And for some reason, that terrified them. He needed to show them he wasn't a threat. Teho slowly lowered himself to his knees. He placed his hands on the ground in front of him and bowed his head low, pressing his forehead almost to the floor. It was a gesture of deep respect in Korean culture, a gesture of submission, a gesture that said, "I am not your enemy. I am sorry," he said slowly, hoping his translation device worked both ways. "I did not mean to come onto your ship. There was a storm. I was going to die. Please, I mean you no harm." The cargo bay fell silent. Teho kept his head down. He could feel their eyes on him. He could sense their confusion. Whatever they had expected from a Death Worlder, it wasn't this. It wasn't a man on his knees, apologizing in a soft voice. "Captain Lyra," someone said. The voice was calmer than the others. Professional. "My scans show he is telling the truth about the storm. The planet below has been completely irradiated. Nothing survived on the surface." 9. Teho felt his chest tighten. Nothing survived. Did that mean his mother was dead? Did that mean everyone was dead? "He is unarmed," the calm voice continued. "His stress hormones indicate genuine fear and submission. I do not believe he intends violence." "That means nothing," the warrior growled. "Death Worlders are dangerous, even without weapons. Their bodies are weapons." Captain Lyra, the one in red, had not lowered her blade. She stood there for a long moment, looking down at the human kneeling before her. Finally, she spoke. "We will take him to the Galactic Council. They will decide what to do with him. Until then, he stays in the cargo hold, contained, watched." She paused. "Do not underestimate him. Do not approach him alone. And do not, under any circumstances, make him angry." She turned and walked away. The others followed, except for two who remained by the door, weapons drawn and pointed at him. Teho stayed on his knees, head bowed, and wondered what exactly humans had done to make these aliens so afraid. 3 days passed on the alien ship. They gave Teho a small storage room to live in. It had no windows, no furniture, and no way to contact anyone. But it had air, and it was warm enough to survive. And they brought him food twice a day. He couldn't complain. He was alive. The food was strange. Some kind of paste that tasted like nothing he had ever eaten before. It was sweet and sour and bitter all at once. His stomach didn't like it at first, but he forced himself to eat. He needed to stay strong. He needed to stay calm. He needed to prove that he wasn't the monster they thought he was. On the 4th day, the medic came to examine him. Her name was Seely. She wore a white uniform and carried a device that looked like a flat piece of glass with lights inside it. 2 guards stood at the door, their weapons pointed at Teho, while Seely approached him carefully, like he was a bomb that might explode at any moment. "Please remain still," she said. Her voice was soft and clinical. "I need to scan your biology." Teho sat on the floor with his back against the wall. He didn't move. He barely breathed. Seely held the glass device in front of his chest. The lights flickered and changed colors. She moved it up to his head, then down to his legs. Her large eyes grew wider with every second that passed. "This is impossible," she whispered. "What is it?" one of the guards asked nervously. "His bone density is 3 times higher than any species in the galactic database. His muscle fibers are reinforced with a protein structure I have never seen before. His immune system is actively fighting off 17 different bacteria right now, bacteria that would kill most other beings in hours." She paused, her voice shaking slightly. "And his cellular regeneration rate suggests he can heal from injuries at 4 times the speed of a Villani." The guards gripped their weapons tighter. "He is exactly what the stories say," Seely continued. "A death worlder. A being forged by the most hostile planet in the known galaxy." Taeho cleared his throat. "May I speak?" All 3 aliens flinched at the sound of his voice. "What is a death worlder?" he asked. "I keep hearing that word. I don't understand what it means." Seely looked at him like he had asked what water was. "You truly don't know? I am just an engineer. I fix machines. I don't know anything about galactic politics or what other species think about humans." Seely glanced at the guards, then back at Taeho. She seemed to be thinking about whether to answer him. Finally, she spoke. "The galaxy classifies planets by their danger level. Most civilized worlds are Class 1 or 2. Comfortable gravity, stable temperatures, breathable air, minimal predators. Our homeworld, Villana, is Class 2. She paused. "Your planet, Earth, is Class 12. Taeho blinked. "Is that bad?" "Class 12 is the highest possible classification. It means your world is so hostile that intelligent life should never have evolved there. Your gravity is crushing. Your temperature range is extreme. Your atmosphere contains a corrosive gas called oxygen. Your planet is covered in liquid hydrogen oxide that falls from the sky. You have thousands of species of venomous creatures. You have diseases that mutate and evolve. You have natural disasters that reshape entire continents." Seely shook her head slowly. "By all logic, your species should have died out millions of years ago. Instead, you became the apex predators of a world that kills everything else. You adapted. You survived. You became strong. So you think humans are dangerous?" "I think humans are terrifying," Seely said honestly. "The stories say that a single human can run for hours without stopping. That you can survive injuries that would kill any other being. That you form social bonds with predators and use them as companions. That you eat the flesh of other creatures and drink fermented poison for entertainment. That you have fought massive wars against each other for thousands of years and somehow kept going." Taeho didn't know what to say. Everything she described was true. Humans did run marathons for fun. They did keep dogs and cats as pets. They did eat meat and drink alcohol. They had survived world wars and plagues and ice ages. He had never thought of any of it as unusual before. "I won't hurt anyone," he said quietly. "I know you don't believe me, but it's true. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a killer. I'm just a man who wanted to live." Seely studied him with those large, glowing eyes. "Your words say one thing. Your biology says another. I have scanned hundreds of species in my career. You are, by far, the most dangerous organism I have ever examined." She turned and left the room. The guards followed, sealing the door behind them. Taeho sat alone in the darkness and thought about what she had said. Over the next few days, he tried his best to seem harmless. When they brought him food, he thanked them politely. When they checked on him through the small window in the door, he smiled and waved gently. When he heard footsteps outside his room, he made sure to stay sitting down, to keep his movements slow and predictable. On the 7th day, the young one came to visit him. Her name was Nellie. She was the one in the yellow uniform who had backed away in fear when they first met. She was smaller than the others, with bigger eyes and a nervous energy that reminded Taeho of a curious child. She stood at the door, looking at him through the window. She didn't come inside. She didn't have a weapon. "Hello," she said softly. "Hello," Teho replied. "Are you really from a death world? I am from Earth." "I guess that is what you call a death world." Nellie tilted her head. "What is it like there?" Teho thought about home. He thought about the mountains and the oceans. He thought about the smell of rain and the sound of birds singing in the morning. He thought about his mother's cooking and his father's laughter. "It's beautiful," he said. "And dangerous, I suppose. But mostly beautiful. The stories say Earth has giant reptiles that eat people." Teho laughed. "Those died a long time ago. Millions of years before humans existed." Nellie's fins raised slightly. Teho had noticed that the fins on their heads moved to show emotion, like how humans raised their eyebrows or wrinkled their noses. "You laughed," she said. "Yes. The stories say Deathworlders don't laugh. They say you only know violence and survival." Teho smiled sadly. "Humans laugh a lot, actually. We laugh when we're happy. We laugh when we're nervous. Sometimes we laugh when we're sad, because it's better than crying." Nellie stared at him for a long moment. Then, she did something unexpected. She pressed her hand against the window. Palm, flat against the glass. Teho understood the gesture. He raised his own hand and pressed it against his side of the window. His hand was larger than hers, his fingers thicker and rougher. But for that one moment, they were connected. "I don't think you're a monster," Nellie whispered. "I think the stories are wrong." Before Teho could respond, a sharp voice called from down the corridor. "Nellie, get away from there." It was the warrior, Kessa. She marched toward them with fury in her eyes. Nellie quickly pulled her hand away and hurried off. Kessa gave Teho a look of pure hatred through the window, then followed the young one. Teho lowered his hand and returned to his spot against the wall. One person believed him now. That was a start. He just needed to prove himself to the rest. He hoped he would get the chance. The attack came. On the 12th day, Teho was sleeping when the ship shook violently. Alarms started blaring. Emergency lights turned the walls red. He jumped to his feet and pressed his face against the small window in his door. Outside, he could see crew members running. He could hear shouting and screaming and the sound of weapons firing. Something was very wrong. The ship shook again, harder this time. Teho was thrown against the wall. He heard a terrible sound of metal being torn apart. Someone was cutting through the hull. They were being boarded. Teho tried the door. It was locked. Of course it was locked. He was still a prisoner. He slammed his shoulder against it, but it didn't move. He looked around for something to use, some tool or piece of metal that could help him break out. There was nothing. The sounds of fighting grew closer. He heard plasma fire. He heard aliens screaming in pain. He heard a deep, ugly voice laughing. Then he heard Nellie. "Please, please don't hurt me." Something inside Teho snapped. He stepped back from the door. He took a deep breath. He thought about everything Seeley had told him about human biology. Bones, 3 times denser than any other species. Muscles reinforced with proteins no one had ever seen. A body forged by a death world. He had never tested the limits of that body before. He had never needed to. Teho lowered his shoulder and charged at the door. The impact hurt. It hurt more than anything he had ever felt. But the door bent inward. He stepped back and charged again. The metal screamed and twisted. One more time. He threw his entire weight into it, and the door finally gave way, ripping off its frame and crashing into the corridor. He didn't stop to think. He ran toward the sound of Nellie's voice. The pirates were creatures he didn't recognize. They were covered in dark scales, with yellow eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. They wore mismatched armor and carried brutal weapons. There were 3 of them standing over Nellie, who was cowering against the wall. One of the pirates reached for her. Teho grabbed him by the back of his armor and threw him into the wall. The impact left a dent in the metal. The pirate didn't get up. The other two turned toward him with shock in their eyes. "What is that?" one of them hissed. Tae-ho didn't answer. He swung his fist into the second pirate's face. He felt bones break. The pirate dropped. The third one raised his weapon, some kind of bladed staff, and swung it at Tae-ho's head. He caught it. The blade cut into his palm. Blood ran down his arm. 3 down. How many more were there? He looked at Nellie. She shook her head slowly, staring at him with those huge eyes. There was fear there, but also something else. Wonder. Maybe. "Stay here," Tae-ho said. "Hide. Don't come out until I come back for you." He didn't wait for her response. He ran toward the sounds of fighting. The ship's main corridor was a war zone. 5 more pirates were pushing forward, firing at a barricade where Tora and Mova were hiding. Neither of them had weapons. They had taken cover behind overturned equipment and were just trying to survive. Tae-ho came at the pirates from behind. The first one didn't even see him coming. Tae-ho grabbed him in a chokehold and squeezed until he went limp. The second turned and fired. The plasma shot hit Tae-ho in the shoulder. It burned. It burned like fire. But he kept moving. He headbutted the pirate so hard that the creature's helmet cracked. The remaining 3 pirates backed away. They had never seen anything like this. A creature that took a plasma shot and kept coming. A creature that fought with bare hands against armed warriors and won. "What are you?" one of them screamed. "I'm human," Tae-ho said. "And you're going to leave this ship, now." They didn't leave. They attacked. It was the longest 12 minutes of Tae-ho's life. He fought through the pain. He fought through the exhaustion. He fought even when his vision started to blur and his legs wanted to give out. One by one, the pirates fell. When the last one went down, Tae-ho leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. His body was covered in cuts and burns. His shoulder was still smoking from the plasma hit. Blood dripped from his hands onto the floor, but he was still standing. He heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Kessa, the warrior, staring at him with her weapon raised. For a moment, he thought she was going to shoot him. Then he noticed the wound on her leg. She had been fighting too. She had been injured. "The captain," Kessa said. "She's in the command room." More pirates went that way. Tae-ho nodded and started walking. Kessa followed him. They found Captain Lyra on the floor of the command room. 2 pirates stood over her, one holding a blade to her throat. The captain was bleeding from a wound in her side. She looked up at Tae-ho as he entered, and he saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hope. Let her go," Tae-ho said. The pirate with the blade laughed. "Or what? You'll bleed on me some more?" Tae-ho looked at the blade against Lyra's throat. He looked at the pirate's yellow eyes. He calculated the distance, the angle, the time it would take. Then he moved. He was faster than they expected. He was faster than he expected. His hand closed around the pirate's wrist before the blade could cut into Lyra's neck. He squeezed. He heard the sound of bones breaking. The pirate screamed and dropped the blade. The second pirate fired at him, but Kessa was there, tackling the creature to the ground and knocking him out with the handle of her weapon. It was over. Tae-ho stood there, swaying on his feet. The adrenaline was fading now, and all the pain was rushing back. He could barely see straight, but he made himself walk to where Captain Lyra lay on the floor. He knelt beside her. "Are you all right, Captain?" he asked. She stared at him. This impossible creature. This death worlder who had just saved her entire crew. He was covered in his own blood, burned and beaten, and barely able to stand. And yet his first words were to ask about her. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I'll heal," he said. And somehow, she knew he was telling the truth. He would heal. Because that's what humans did. They survived. Celie arrived moments later with her medical equipment. She started treating the captain's wounds, but she kept glancing at Tae-ho with a new expression on her face. "You killed none of them," Celie said quietly. I checked. Every pirate on this ship is alive. Unconscious. Injured. But alive. Tejo blinked. He hadn't thought about it at the time. He had just been trying to stop them. He had never intended to kill anyone. I'm not a killer, he said simply. I told you that. Captain Lyra reached up and grabbed his arm. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were intense. You saved us, she said. All of us. Why? Tejo looked at her, then at Kessa, then at Seely. He thought about Nellie hiding in the corridor. He thought about Tora and Mova behind their barricade. He thought about the rest of the crew somewhere on this ship, scared and fighting. Because you were in danger, he said. And for the first time since they had met, Captain Lyra smiled at him. Seely worked on Tejo for hours. She cleaned his wounds and bandaged his burns and watched with amazement as his body began healing itself right before her eyes. The plasma burn on his shoulder, which should have taken weeks to heal on any Villani, was already closing after just one day. The cuts on his hands were forming new skin by the hour. This is remarkable, she kept saying. This should not be possible. Tejo lay on the medical bed and let her work. He was tired. More tired than he had ever been in his life. But he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the pirates. He saw the blade against Captain Lyra's throat. He felt the plasma burning through his flesh. The door to the medical room opened. One by one, the crew came in. First was Nellie, who ran to his bedside and grabbed his hand. She was crying, her tears leaving trails down her blue skin. You came back for me, she whispered. Tejo squeezed her hand gently. I always keep my promises. Next came Tora and Mova. They stood awkwardly near the door, not sure what to say. They were the ones he had saved in the corridor. They had watched him fight 5 armed pirates with nothing but his bare hands. Thank you, Tora said finally. We would be dead without you. Mova just nodded. But her eyes said everything. Kessa came next. She stood at the foot of his bed, with her arms crossed. Her leg was bandaged from her own injuries during the fight. I was wrong about you, she said. The words seemed to cost her a lot. I thought you were just another monster. But a monster would have killed those pirates. A monster would not have risked his life for people who locked him in a storage room. I don't blame you for being careful, Tejo said. If I heard stories about a species that sounded as scary as humans apparently do, I would be careful too. Kessa almost smiled. Finally, Captain Lyra entered. She was using a walking stick because of her wound, but she refused to stay in bed. She was the captain. She needed to see her crew. She stood beside Tejo and looked down at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The pirates have been secured in our cargo hold, she said. We will drop them at the nearest outpost for the authorities to collect. They are all alive, thanks to you. Good. You could have killed them. No one would have blamed you. They were trying to kill us. Well, Tejo thought about this for a moment. On Earth, we have a saying. The measure of a man is what he does with power. Anyone can kill when they are angry or scared. It takes more strength to choose not to. The room fell silent. Tell us about Earth, Nellie said suddenly. Tell us about humans. The real stories, not the scary ones. Tejo looked around the room. 7 Villani women stared back at him with curiosity in their glowing eyes. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know who he really was. So he told them. He told them about human history. The wars and the suffering. Yes. But also the art, and the music, and the love. He told them about how humans had been killing each other for thousands of years, but also how they had been healing each other, teaching each other, helping each other. He told them about the pyramids of Egypt and the Great Wall of China, about the moon landing and the internet, about how humans had looked up at the stars since the beginning of time and dreamed of traveling among them. He told them about family, about how humans formed bonds so strong that they would die for each other without hesitation. About parents who worked their whole lives to give their children better futures. About friends who stuck together through the hardest times. About strangers who helped other strangers for no reason other than kindness. We are not strong because we want to hurt others, Tejo said quietly. We are strong because our world gave us no choice. Everything on Earth tried to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even each other sometimes. But we survived. And the thing that helped us survive more than anything else was not our strength, or our speed, or our healing. It was our love. He paused, his throat tight with emotion. My mother is a cook. She worked 16 hours a day in a restaurant so she could send me to engineering school. My father was a miner. He died in an accident when I was 12. He used his last breath to push another miner out of the way of falling rocks. A man he barely knew. Celie wiped something from her eye. Your father died to save a stranger? That's what humans do. We see someone in trouble, and something inside us makes us help. I don't know if it's evolution, or culture, or something else entirely, but when I saw those pirates hurting you, I didn't think. I just acted. Because that's who I am. That's who we are. Nellie was crying openly now. Even Kessa looked moved. Captain Lyra reached down and placed her hand on Tejo's arm. Her touch was gentle, almost tender. I have commanded this ship for 15 years, she said. I have met hundreds of species across dozens of star systems. I thought I understood the galaxy. She shook her head slowly. I was wrong. I knew nothing. You have shown me that the universe is bigger, and stranger, and more wonderful than I ever imagined. Quote, Does this mean I'm not a prisoner anymore? Tejo asked with a small smile. Lyra returned the smile. You were never really a prisoner. You were a guest we were too scared to treat properly. From now on, you have full access to the ship. You can go anywhere, talk to anyone, do anything you wish. There is one thing I wish for more than anything else. Name it. I need to know if my mother survived the storm. The colony on Kepler 7, B. Shelter 3. Mova, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. I am the navigator. I can access communication networks from the next relay station. I will help you find out. Tejo felt tears building in his eyes. Thank you. Thank you all. Over the next few hours, something changed on the ship. Tejo was no longer treated like a dangerous animal. He was treated like a member of the crew. Tora invited him to the engine room to look at some systems she couldn't figure out. Tejo found the problem in minutes. A power converter was installed backwards. An easy fix that made the engines run 30% more efficiently. Yuna, the pilot, asked him to sit in the cockpit with her and tell her more stories about Earth. She was fascinated by the idea of birds. You mean creatures that fly without technology? Just using their bodies? She made him describe them for an hour. Kessa challenged him to a sparring match in the cargo bay. She was faster than him and knew techniques he had never seen before. But he was stronger and could take more damage. They fought to a draw, and both ended up laughing on the floor. And Nellie followed him everywhere, asking question after question about human customs. When he taught her the Korean word for friend, she repeated it over and over until she got the pronunciation perfect. Chingu, she said proudly. You are my Chingu. Tejo smiled and patted her head. Yes, Nellie, I am your Chingu. That night, Captain Lyra came to his new quarters. It was a real room now, with a bed and a window looking out at the stars. I wanted to apologize, she said, for how we treated you, for the fear. You don't need to apologize. You did what you thought was right, perhaps, but I should have looked closer. I should have seen who you really were. She paused at the door. Good night, Tejo. Sleep well. Good night, Captain. She was gone before he could say more. But Tejo noticed she had called him by his name. Not human. Not Death Worlder. Tejo. He lay down on his bed and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his mother was waiting. And these 7 alien women would help him find her. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. For the first time since the storm, Taeho felt hope. 3 weeks had passed since the pirate attack. The ship traveled slowly through open space, making its way toward the nearest human outpost. Taeho had received word through the communication relay that his colony had survived the ion storm. The shelters had held. Most people had made it inside in time. His mother was alive. He had cried when he heard the news. He hadn't cared that the entire crew was watching. He had simply fallen to his knees and let the tears come. And instead of being scared or confused, the Villani women had gathered around him. Nellie had hugged him. Celie had explained to the others that humans released stress through tears. Lyra had simply stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, steady and strong. Life on the ship had changed completely. Taeho was no longer a passenger. He was a member of the crew. He had duties now. Tora had insisted that he work with her in the engine room, claiming that his understanding of machines was like nothing she had ever seen before. "It's like you can hear them," she said one day as they repaired a faulty coolant system together. "Like the machines speak to you." Taeho laughed. "I just grew up fixing things. My father was the same way. He could look at an engine and know exactly what was wrong with it." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was. I miss him." Tora paused her work and looked at him. "Tell me about him?" So Taeho told her. He told her about his father's laugh, loud and full of joy. About his rough hands that could fix anything. About the way he would sing old Korean songs while he worked. About the day he died saving another man's life. Tora listened without interrupting. When he finished, she reached out and placed her hand over his. "On Villana, we believe that the ones we lose stay with us. They become part of our spirit. Your father is still with you, Taeho. He lives in your hands when you fix machines. He lives in your heart when you save lives." Taeho didn't trust himself to speak. He just nodded and went back to work. That evening, Yuna asked him to join her in the cockpit. Flying through empty space could be lonely, she explained. She enjoyed his company. They talked for hours. Yuna was curious about everything. She wanted to know about Earth's oceans and mountains. She wanted to know about human sports and entertainment. She wanted to know about Korean culture specifically, which Taeho was happy to share. "We have something called kimchi," he said. "It's a kind of food made from vegetables that are allowed to ferment. It tastes very strong." Yuna made a face. "You eat rotting vegetables? Fermented vegetables?" "There's a difference. It's actually very good for you. My mother makes the best kimchi in the colony. I want to try it someday." "Maybe you will." Yuna turned to look at him, her large eyes reflecting the starlight from outside the window. "Not just individuals, but our entire species?" Taeho thought about this. "I think so. We're not as different as you might think. We both value family. We both protect the ones we love. We both dream about the stars. We are different in many ways, too. Different isn't bad. Different is interesting. Different is interesting." Yuna smiled. It was a warm smile that made something flutter in Taeho's chest. He quickly looked away, not sure what that feeling meant. The sparring sessions with Kessa became a daily routine. They trained together in the cargo bay, pushing each other to their limits. Kessa was a master of Villani martial arts. Her movements were fast and elegant, like water flowing. Taeho was slower, but more powerful. His hits landed like hammers. At first, their fights were competitive. Each of them wanted to win. But over time, something changed. "You're holding back," Kessa said one day after she had knocked him to the ground for the 3rd time. Taeho looked up at her. "What do you mean?" "I've seen what you can do. In the pirate attack, you moved faster than I could follow. You threw a Korvax warrior into a wall, hard enough to dent metal. But when you fight me, you pull your punches. Why?" Taeho got to his feet and dusted himself off. Because I don't want to hurt you. I'm a warrior. I can handle pain. I know. But I still don't want to cause it. Not to you. Kessa stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was hard to read. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead against his. This is a Villani gesture, she explained, her voice soft. It means respect. It means trust. She pulled back, but her eyes never left his. You have earned both from me, Taeho. Even Seely, the serious medic who approached everything with scientific detachment, began to change around him. She still performed daily health scans. But now, they talked, while she worked. She asked him about human medicine, and was amazed by the simplicity of some techniques. You mean humans used to cut open bodies to fix problems inside? She asked with horror. We still do sometimes. It's called surgery. That's barbaric. It works. And we're getting better at less invasive methods. Seely shook her head. Your species is fascinating. You solve problems through sheer stubbornness. You refuse to give up, even when logic says you should. Is that a compliment or an insult? Both, I think. Mova, the quiet navigator, showed her trust in a different way. She began sharing her navigation duties with Taeho, teaching him how to read star charts and calculate jump distances. For Villani, sharing professional knowledge was an intimate gesture. It meant she considered him worthy of learning their most valued skills. You learn quickly, she said one day as he successfully plotted a course correction. I had a good teacher. Mova's fins rose slightly, a sign of pleasure. Perhaps you will teach me something from your world. In return, what would you like to learn? The song. The one you taught Nellie. I heard her singing it. So Taeho taught Mova a Korean folk song called Arirang. Her voice was different from a human's, higher and more melodic. But she picked up the tune quickly. Soon, she was humming it while she worked. And then there was Captain Lyra. She came to his quarters every night now. Just to talk, she said. Just to understand him better, she said. But their conversations grew longer and deeper as the weeks passed. She told him about her life. About growing up on Villana as the daughter of a military commander. About joining the research corps instead of the Navy, because she wanted to explore, not fight. About the loneliness of command and the weight of responsibility. Being a captain is hard, she admitted one night. Everyone looks to you for answers. They expect you to be strong all the time. They don't see that sometimes you're just as scared as they are. I see it, Taeho said softly. I see you. Lyra. Not the captain. You. She looked at him with those glowing eyes, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. You are a strange human, she finally said. Strange good or strange bad? Strange wonderful. She left shortly after. But Taeho couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at him. Something was happening on this ship. Something he hadn't expected. These 7 alien women, who had once feared him, were becoming something more. Friends, certainly. But also maybe something else. Something he didn't have a word for. What he didn't know was that the Villani had a word for it. They called it a bonding circle. It was an ancient tradition from their homeworld. When a warrior proved themselves worthy, they could be claimed by a group of women who had all chosen them together. And one night, while Taeho slept peacefully in his quarters, 7 Villani women met in the common room and made a silent agreement. This human was theirs. They just hadn't told him yet. The trouble started when they docked at Nexus Station. Nexus was the largest space station in the sector. A massive structure that floated at the crossroads of a dozen trade routes. Thousands of ships came and went every day. Millions of beings from hundreds of species lived and worked there. It was supposed to be a quick stop for supplies and fuel before continuing to the human outpost. But word had spread faster than light itself. A human was traveling on a Villani research vessel. A Death Worlder. Loose in civilized space. The news networks had been running the story for days. Some called it an invasion. Others called it a threat to galactic security. Politicians were demanding action. When the ship docked, they were surrounded. Galactic Council enforcers boarded the vessel within minutes. They were tall beings in silver armor, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Their leader, a thin gray creature with too many eyes, pushed past Captain Lyra and entered the ship without permission. "We are here for the human," the enforcer announced. "He is to be detained for study and evaluation. The Galactic Council has declared humanity a quarantine species. No human is permitted in Council space without authorization." Tejo stood in the common room, watching this happen. The crew had gathered around him, forming a barrier between him and the enforcers. None of them carried weapons. None of them had a chance if things turned violent. But they stood there anyway. "This man is under my protection," Captain Lyra said firmly. Her voice carried the authority of someone who would not be moved. "He is a guest on my vessel. I will not hand him over to be treated like a laboratory specimen." The enforcer's many eyes blinked in sequence. "You do not have a choice, Captain. The Council's word is law. Step aside." "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Tejo felt his heart pounding. He didn't want the crew to get hurt because of him. He didn't want them to suffer for protecting a human. "Lyra," he said quietly. "Maybe I should go with them. I don't want anyone to get hurt." She turned to look at him, and he saw fire in her eyes. "This is not about you, Tejo. This is about what is right. The Council fears what they do not understand. They want to lock you away because you are different. That is not justice. That is cowardice." The enforcer raised his weapon. "Enough. This is your final warning. Surrender the human, or face the consequences." What happened next surprised everyone. Kessa stepped forward. The fierce warrior who had once wanted to kill Tejo now stood between him and the enforcers, her hands raised in a gesture of defiance. "If you want him, you'll have to go through all of us," she said. Tora joined her. Then Seely. Then Mova and Yuna. Even young Nellie stepped forward, her small body trembling but her face determined. 7 Villani women against a squad of armed enforcers. It was suicide. They all knew it, and they didn't care. The enforcer hesitated. This was not what he had expected. These were supposed to be civilians, researchers who would hand over their prisoner without a fight. Instead, he was facing a wall of defiance that confused him. "Stand down," the enforcer ordered. "You are making a serious mistake." "The only mistake," Captain Lyra said calmly, "was yours in thinking we would betray a member of our crew." A tense silence followed. No one moved. No one breathed. Then a new voice spoke from the doorway. "What is the meaning of this?" Everyone turned. A tall figure stood at the entrance, wearing the ornate robes of a council official. Her skin was golden. Her eyes were deep purple, and she carried herself with the casual grace of someone who was used to being obeyed. "Elder Vessa," the enforcer said, bowing slightly. "We were detaining the human as ordered. I gave no such order." Elder Vessa walked into the common room, her eyes moving from the enforcers to the Villani crew, to Tejo himself. "I was informed that a human had entered council space. I came to see for myself." She stopped in front of Tejo. She was slightly taller than him, her golden face unreadable. "So," she said slowly, "you are the Death Worlder everyone is so afraid of." "I'm just an engineer," Tejo replied. "I fix machines. And you have been traveling with this crew for how long?" "Almost 2 months now." "And in that time, have you killed anyone?" "No." "Have you threatened anyone?" "No." "Have you stolen, destroyed property, or caused harm to any being on this vessel?" "No." "I've helped repair the engines. I've defended the ship against pirates. I've tried to be a good guest." Elder Vessa raised one elegant eyebrow. "Defended against pirates?" Captain Lyra stepped forward. "He saved our lives. We were attacked by Korvac's raiders. They boarded our ship and would have killed us all. Teho fought them, single-handedly. He took injuries that would have killed any Villani. And he didn't kill a single pirate. He disabled them, restrained them, and helped us deliver them to authorities. Is this true? Vesa asked the enforcer. The enforcer looked uncomfortable. There are reports of a confrontation. But, yes or no? A pause. Yes, Elder. It appears to be true. And, Elder Vesa turned back to Teho. You fought against armed raiders without killing them? I'm not a killer. I never have been. The stories say humans are violent. That you are predators who cannot control your instincts. Quote, some humans are violent, some Villani are probably violent too. But most of us just want to live in peace, take care of our families, and maybe do something good with our lives. Elder Vesa studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to face her enforcers. Lower your weapons, she commanded. This man will not be detained, but Elder. I am the council, Lieutenant. Or have you forgotten? Her voice was sharp enough to cut steel. I came here prepared to find a monster. Instead, I find an engineer who fixes machines and defends those who once imprisoned him. I find a being who, despite being feared and mistreated, showed mercy to his enemies. If this is what humans are, then perhaps the galaxy has been wrong about your species. Does this mean I'm free to go? Teho asked carefully. It means you are granted provisional status as a cultural observer under Villani custody. You will have limited rights to travel in council space. She paused. It also means I will be recommending to the full council that humanity be reconsidered for membership in the Galactic Union. A stunned silence filled the room. You would sponsor humanity? Captain Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. I would consider it. One man does not represent an entire species, but if there are more humans like this one, then perhaps the Deathworlders are not the monsters we believed them to be. Elder Vesa walked toward the exit, then stopped. Captain, I expect a full report on your experiences with this human. Every interaction, every observation, every impression. The council will want to know everything. I will prepare it personally. Good. And human? Teho stood a little straighter. Yes. Do not make me regret this decision. She was gone before he could respond. The enforcers followed her out, leaving the crew alone in the common room. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Nellie burst into tears and threw herself at Teho, hugging him tightly. I thought they were going to take you away, she sobbed. I thought I would never see you again. Teho held her and looked around at the others. Tora was wiping her eyes. Seely was smiling in that reserved way of hers. Kessa was trying to look tough, but her fins were trembling. Mova and Yuna stood together, relief clear on their faces, and Lyra. Captain Lyra stood in front of him, her expression soft and warm. I meant what I said, she told him. You are a member of this crew. You are under my protection. Always. Teho didn't know what to say. So he simply bowed his head, the same gesture of respect he had shown when they first met. But this time, it meant something different. This time, it meant thank you. It meant I trust you. It meant something he wasn't quite ready to put into words. He had come aboard this ship as a terrified survivor hiding from a storm. Now he was something more. He was family. The human outpost at Titan Station appeared on the view screen like a jewel floating in the darkness of space. Teho stood at the observation window, watching it grow larger as the ship approached. His heart was beating fast. Somewhere on that station, he would find news of his mother. Somewhere there, he would reconnect with his own species for the first time in months. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. The docking procedures took longer than usual. A Villani research vessel requesting permission to dock at a human station was not a common occurrence. There were questions and security checks and forms to fill out, but eventually, the hatches opened, and the crew was allowed to disembark. The station was busy and loud and full of people who looked like him. Humans walked past, talking and laughing, and going about their daily business. Taeho had never thought he would miss seeing other humans until this moment. He had to stop himself from staring. "Are you all right?" Lyra asked, walking beside him. "Yes. It's just strange. Being around my own kind again. Do you wish to be alone? We can wait on the ship if you prefer." Taeho looked at her. Then at the other 6 women following behind them. Kessa was examining everything, with the suspicious eyes of a warrior in unfamiliar territory. Seely was taking readings on her scanner, fascinated by human biology. Tora was looking at the station's technology with professional interest. Mova and Yuna walked together, whispering observations to each other. Nellie clung to Taeho's arm, nervous in the crowd of strange beings. These 7 women had traveled across space with him. They had defended him against their own government. They had become his closest friends. "No," he said firmly. "I want you with me." The information desk directed them to the communications center. The attendant, a young Korean woman named Park Ji-young, looked surprised to see a human accompanied by 7 tall blue aliens. But she was professional enough not to comment. "I'm looking for information about Kepler's 7b colony," Taeho explained. "About the survivors of the ion storm 2 months ago." Ji-young nodded and began typing on her console. "The colony is still recovering, but most of the survivors have been relocated to various stations. Do you have a specific name you're looking for?" "Kim Mi-hee. She was in Shelter 3. More typing. Then Ji-young smiled. "Kim Mi-hee is listed as a survivor. She was relocated here, to Titan Station, 3 weeks ago. She's been listed as searching for a missing family member." She paused and looked at him. "Kim? Tae-ho. That's me. She's at Residential Block 7, Unit 42. She's been waiting for you." Taeho felt his legs go weak. She was here. She was alive, and she was here, on this very station. The walk to Residential Block 7 felt like the longest journey of his life. The crew followed him in silence, understanding that this was important. When they reached Unit 42, Taeho stood at the door for a long moment. "Do you want us to wait outside?" Lyra asked softly. "No. I want her to meet you." He pressed the doorbell. Footsteps inside. The sound of someone rushing toward the door. It slid open. Kim Mi-hee was a small woman with gray hair and warm eyes. She was wearing a simple dress and an apron, like she had been cooking. When she saw Taeho, those warm eyes filled with tears. "My son," she whispered. "My beautiful son, Mom." She threw her arms around him and held on like she would never let go. Taeho lifted her off the ground, crying and laughing at the same time. They stood there in the doorway, mother and son, reunited against all odds. Behind them, Nellie started crying too. Seely quietly explained to the others that humans expressed joy through tears as well as sadness. Finally, Mi-hee pulled back and looked at her son's face. "I thought you were dead. They said you weren't in any of the shelters. They said no one survived on the surface. I found shelter somewhere else." On a ship, Mi-hee looked past him and noticed the 7 aliens for the first time. Her eyes went wide. She stepped back instinctively. "Mom, it's okay." "Friends? This is Captain Lyra. She commands the ship that picked me up. This is Seely, the medic who treated my wounds. Kessa, the warrior who taught me how to fight. Tora, the engineer who let me help fix the ship. Mova and Yuna, who kept us flying. And this is Nellie." Nellie stepped forward shyly. "Hello, Mrs. Kim. Your son taught me a song." And then, in careful Korean, she began to sing Arirang. Mi-hee's hand flew to her mouth. She listened as this alien girl, this blue-skinned creature from another world, sang the old folk song that generations of Korean mothers had taught their children. When Nellie finished, Mi-hee was crying again. "Please," she said, wiping her eyes. "Please come inside. I was making dinner. There's plenty for everyone." The apartment was small, but warm. Mi-hee had decorated it to feel like home, with photographs, and cushions, and a small shelf of cooking spices. The Villani crew looked around with curiosity, touching nothing but observing everything. Sit, sit, Mihi insisted. I'll bring tea. Over the next few hours, Teho told his mother everything. The storm, the ship, the fear and the understanding, the pirates and the fight, the council and the journey here. She listened without interrupting, occasionally glancing at the alien women sitting around her table. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You saved his life, she finally said, looking at Captain Lyra. You protected my son when he had no one else. He protected us first, Lyra replied. He risked everything to save us from pirates. He asked nothing in return. That sounds like my Teho, always helping others. Even when he was a boy, he would give his lunch to children who had none. She smiled sadly. His father was the same way. He told us about his father, Tora said. The best man I ever knew. The evening passed with food and stories and laughter. Mihi's cooking was strange to the Villani, but they tried everything politely. Nellie decided she loved kimchi. Despite her earlier skepticism, Kessa arm-wrestled with Mihi and lost on purpose, which everyone pretended not to notice. As the night grew late, the crew prepared to return to the ship, but at the door, Lyra turned to face Teho. We need to speak with you, she said. All of us. Before you decide anything about your future. Teho felt something shift in the air. The other 6 women gathered behind Lyra, their faces serious. What is this about? Lyra took a deep breath. There is a custom on Villana. When a warrior proves themselves worthy through bravery and honor, they may be claimed by those who recognize their worth. She paused. We have all agreed, the 7 of us. We wish to claim you. Teho's brain stopped working. Claim me? It is called a bonding circle. It means that you would be ours, and we would be yours. Forever. That's like marriage? Similar, yes. But with all of us. Together, Teho looked at them. 7 pairs of glowing eyes stared back at him with hope and nervousness, and something that looked very much like love. That's not how human customs work, he said weakly. Mova stepped forward. Then teach us your customs. We have time. I want to stay with you, Nellie added quickly. No matter what you decide, you're my brother now. Kessa crossed her arms. If you say no, I will simply follow you anyway. I have decided you are worth protecting. We are not asking you to decide tonight, Seely said in her calm, logical voice. We are simply telling you how we feel. The choice is yours. Teho looked at Lyra. She stood before him, strong and beautiful and vulnerable in a way he had never seen before. I don't know how this works, he admitted. I don't know if it can work. Humans and Villani. 7 women and 1 man. Everything about this should be impossible. Everything about you is impossible, Lyra replied. You are a death worlder who saves lives instead of taking them. You survived a storm that should have killed you. You crossed the stars and changed the minds of people who wanted to lock you away. Behind him, Mihi quietly cleared her throat. Teho turned to see his mother smiling. I always wanted more daughters, she said. And despite everything, despite the craziness and the uncertainty and the complete impossibility of the situation, Teho laughed. He laughed until tears streamed down his face. He laughed until the Villani women started laughing too, even though they weren't entirely sure what was funny. Okay, he finally said. I don't know how this works, but I want to find out. Together. With all of you. Nellie cheered and hugged him. The others gathered around, and for one beautiful moment, Human and Villani stood together in a small apartment on Titan Station. A new family forged by unlikely circumstances. Years later, scholars would write about this moment. They would call it the beginning of human-Villani relations. They would study how one engineer had changed the galaxy's perception of Earth. But for Teho, It was simpler than that. He had been running from a storm. He had found a home. And somehow, against all odds, he had found love too. 7 different kinds of love, from 7 extraordinary women who had seen past his species and found the man underneath. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders. But for Kim Tae-ho, the greatest wonder of all was right here, in this room, holding him close. He was finally home.